What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Dorm Room History Podcast. I know everyone's been waiting for this to come out, and they were like, wait a second. The Dorm Room History Podcast, that's the one that I like, and it's not out. But now it is.
But it's out now.
It's out now.
To you, to me, not yet.
Well, yeah, we're recording
But to you, it's out.
But to you, it is out. Recording this on a beautiful... We could just lie.
What? A beautiful February morning.
Beautiful February morning.
And no one would know.
Whoa. But yeah, we're excited to get to talk about history today. Obviously, of course, we're going to have to first fulfill a contractual obligation to tell you what happened this week in history.
Yep.
And that contract was written with ourselves.
Otherwise, we don't get paid by our own money that we have ourselves.
Yeah. So, first of all, big one that happened in 1973. Both the events this week, there was nothing really interesting that happened in ancient history. There was like the battle.
Well, tomorrow's April Fool's Day, so that's pretty interesting.
That is interesting. There was like the battle of what is it called? The Battle of Copenhagen. But it's really, I don't know, I don't find it that interesting as a battle because it's basically the larger British Navy comes and just destroys the Danish Navy.
Okay.
And so it's like, well, British Navy versus Danish Navy, who do you think is going to win?
Who would you buy in that
It's
situation?
the British Navy, and the British Navy does win. So it's really not that exciting. And then the Danish surrender when they learned that their king was assassinated by the British while they were doing the battle. So,
well, that's all new info to me.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know any of that.
Really not that interesting. So everything else is kind of from modern history. So super interesting. 1973, the first ever mobile phone call is made downtown Manhattan by a Motorola employee, Martin Cooper, to the Bell Labs headquarters in New Jersey.
Well, that's cool.
That is pretty cool. It's a big deal. Everyone uses those things nowadays, and that was when they did it.
That's when they did it for the first time.
That's when they got it going.
Good.
And then
And now we have AI that can make pictures of yourself on those.
that's true.
So
We really went downhill. So then two other things that happened.
okay.
These are both, they actually happened on April 4th.
Okay.
But one, 1968, U.S. civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated by James Earl Ray, as we all know, at the Laurel Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay. Were you acting like I was supposed to know that? Did you know that?
No, I was doing the thing professors do. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was all of a sudden, I was like, shoot, does everybody know this? And that's
then,
how I feel in class, too, when they do the same thing.
Yeah, you have no idea.
You don't know what it is.
In 1973, this is a big one.
Dude, all these are happening in 1973.
The World Trade Center, then the world's tallest building, opens in New York City.
Wow.
And it had a great run, and nothing bad ever happened.
A good run. No.
Yeah.
And it's still there today.
Yep. Look it up.
If you don't believe me, Google it.
So yeah, that's what happened this week in history. If anyone was wondering what's going to happen this week in history, this is going to happen this week in history.
Wow. Well, then in the future, when people will be like, what happened in this week? Isn't it a boring week? And they'll be like, no, because dorm room history was recorded that way.
Dorm room history happened that week, and now I know what happened that week.
Yep.
It's exciting stuff. Anyway, with that being said, obviously the next thing that we would do if we were logically to think about is probably get into what we were going to talk about this week.
That's what we would do, but or not. I think we'll just end it right there.
Okay, bye guys.
So this week we're going to talk about a lot of issues that are kind of hot button topics in the modern era that surround race.
Oh.
And the truth of, before, let's just cut to the big kingpin, the big old center of everything. And you have to understand that your race does not make you different than anybody else.
Whoa. Controversial take.
Big take from me, I know. Come send me hate mail if you believe different or something. I don't know. But the point, what we're going to prove in this chapter is that, like, just the color of your skin does not affect you intellectually, mentally, emotionally. Now, like, depending on your culture, that can affect you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But your race does not change your ability to do anything.
Yeah. It's like cars, man.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
If you have the same car, it's a white car, a blue car, or a red car.
Just the same car.
Same speed. But if the red car grew up in a place where they tuned it and made it really fast, it's going to be faster than the other ones.
Like Radiator Springs.
Like Radiator Springs.
Yeah,
if
if
you
it
grew up
grew
in
up there.
Radiator Springs, then it'll be faster.
It's going to be faster.
So the culture can affect it, but the color of the car stays the same. Still the same car.
I feel like there's a lot of I don't know, ideas floating around out there in our modern world surrounding just the continent of Africa and the narratives that go along with the race there. And we're just going to go through and talk about each of those narratives and where it came from historically. And the first one that I want to talk about is we often think of Africa as a place that I don't know. I don't think of this, and hopefully you don't either after listening to some of the podcasts that we've talked about. But a lot of people don't think that there are any great civilizations that come out of Africa. And because they have this belief, sometimes people will try to credit things to Africa that shouldn't be credited to them. We've touched on this a little bit before, but some historians will, and this is not true, this is pseudo-history, but they'll take things like Greek philosophy invented by Aristotle and Socrates and say, well, the Africans invented that first. There's no evidence for that, but the reason they're doing that is they're saying, well, Africa doesn't have any great history that comes from them, so let's try to push them up on the world stage and make them equal to everybody else. Where you don't need to do that.
They already have a lot of cool stuff.
They already have a lot of cool stuff, right?
If you know about Mansa Musa, you're about to know.
Oh man, he's gonna be the main character today.
He's my favorite character in all of history, and he comes from Africa. So,
and then you have great civilizations like Carthage, which we didn't get to talk about as much as I want, but one of the greatest civilizations of all time. And then Egypt, we talked about a lot.
I think Americans are just really dumb, and most of us forget that Egypt is in Africa a lot of the time, and it's probably like the greatest civilization in the history of the world.
Right. There's not very many civilizations that lasted as long as them.
Yeah, pretty much none, actually.
Pretty much none. You got China.
Yeah, China.
And that's about all.
Yeah.
But the point being is that we need to understand that just like every other continent, Africa produces a wealth of great civilizations.
We don't need to give them stuff they don't have because we feel like they don't have anything.
And these people, they're coming from like a good place where they want to be like, yeah, let's make Africa like equal to everyone else. But I feel like when you do that, that's just like a little bit racist.
It discredits everything that they actually do have. Exactly.
And so we're going to talk about, we talked about Egypt and Carthage before. Now we're going to hit probably the third greatest. You can rearrange those three however you want. But it's the third of the top three greatest African civilizations of all time, which is called Mali. And the most famous king of Mali is Mansa Musa.
My favorite.
We'll discuss him a little bit later. But the other narrative I want to talk about is sometimes if you're a little bit more knowledgeable about history, you'll be like, yeah, well, Carthage and Egypt are huge, great civilizations in Africa, but they're all north of the Sahara Desert. The black Africans, the southern Sahara, south of the Sahara Desert people, they don't have a lot to show, right? Also false. Let's understand that. We're going to talk about Zimbabwe and Ethiopia, and then again, Mali is also south of the Sahara Desert. So lots of great civilizations that come from there as well. So let's stop this narrative of Africa doesn't have what all the other continents have. They very much do. Boom. Just because you're a different race or you come from a different continent doesn't mean you're any worse than anybody else.
Yeah. We just defeated racism.
Boom. There it is.
You just saw it happen.
Another thing we're going to talk a lot about today, just the overarching themes or another misconception in America today is that America invented slavery. We invented slavery in the more recent times. Or the only people that enslave are white people and the only people that get enslaved are black people. We need to understand that this is just not true. And I don't even feel like I need to really bring up evidence, but it's just like everywhere in history, every single race has enslaved every other race before, including their own race. Like the Romans are white, and guess who they enslaved? Pretty much all white people.
Yep. We talked about that in the Query Corner once.
Yeah. And so we're going to see a lot of the beginnings of what will become the Atlantic slave trade today. And guess who's enslaving the Africans? Other Africans are the ones that are doing the enslaving, right?
That's tough.
And so if you're wondering where all the African slaves came from that came to America, well, they come from different African kings going and enslaving those slaves. The first time they're enslaved is when other Africans enslaved them. And then they'll bring them to the coast and then sell them to America.
Oh.
Right, so really interesting dynamic, and that's not to say that white people never enslaved anybody. We talked about white people enslaving people already, but the slave trade is going to start from other Africans enslaving.
You go conquer
Africans.
The people next to you, and then they realize, hey, wait a second, I can make money off of this.
Yep, and it's not an African thing. That's not a white person thing. That's an everybody thing.
Actually, everybody does. They can make money off of this.
And we're not condoning slavery. Slavery's horrible.
Slavery's bad.
But you just need to understand that every race does it. And so
it is a great way to make money off of your wars, though.
Yeah, that makes you incredibly rich. Yeah. Absolutely true.
But it's still bad.
Yeah, please just understand that as we talk about all this, you'll see the theme of Africans are not different. White people are not different. Everybody's the same. Everybody does slavery. Everybody has great civilizations. Everybody's able to expand and conquer.
It is interesting how you see the same patterns in all these civilizations, whether they're across continents from each other. I mean, Southern Africa, we've talked about before, is kind of its own continent almost at that time because they couldn't really cross the Sahara. They didn't have contact with anyone else. And it's crazy how the people in America, the people in South America, the people in Europe, the people in China, like they all kind of follow the exact same patterns of how their civilizations developed and fall, and they never talk to each other about it.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. And, you know, sometimes you'll see something happen and you'll be like, man, that's so unique. And then you'll just look at the next civilization over and, oh, they're doing the exact same thing.
Exact same thing, yeah.
Isn't it crazy how humans like all develop the same way?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we came from a common source or something. I don't know, man. But yeah, just really, I don't know, really, really interesting how if you can understand the patterns of history, you can basically predict what people are going to do.
Yeah.
Right. That's what Common Sense is actually all about when Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense.
Yeah.
He's like, look at this. This happened before. What do you think's about to happen now?
Yeah. I heard a quote today that said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And I was like, that's facts.
That's pretty valid. Yep. So just hopefully you listen to what we have to say and take away the lessons like that. I don't know. Have you seen those misconceptions in your life before?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like one time I was sitting in history class and someone was like, why don't we ever hear about African history? And I was like, yeah, that's facts. Why don't we hear about that? And the teacher's like, well, we just like talked about Egypt a bunch. I was like, oh. Yeah, that's Africa.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I wish happened more in history is we talk about people because of who they are, because of the great things they did. I don't think we should judge people based on things they can't control, right? If you, just because you're born in a certain continent, I don't feel like we should promote you any more than we promote anybody else.
It's true.
Just because you're born a certain race or a certain gender doesn't mean we should promote you any more than we should promote another place.
Yeah. If I could quote a very controversial man, Jeff Bezos.
What do you say?
Quote I really like, but he talks about, he kind of talks about this a lot, but he's like, there's a lot of people, he's given a speech at a commencement. Is that what it's called when you graduate? Commencement speech or something?
A graduation speech?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably.
When they give that speech, I don't know.
Whatever that speech is, he did it.
I think it was at Princeton because he graduated summa cum laude from Princeton. But
dang, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, he's actually a really smart guy. Yeah, but
well, I believe it to be someone like that. You got to be smart.
Yeah. But he was giving the speech and he said, "There's a lot of people that are very gifted in this room." He's like, "Some people math may be easy for you. Other people are gifted in other ways." He's like, "But you can never be proud of your gifts because they were given to you. All you can be proud of is what you do."
That's so.
I thought that was so wise because I feel like we sometimes may have a tendency to be proud of our gifts or how we were born, how we were raised. Those things were all given to us. What matters is like it may be way harder to get better at math than you are now.
Yeah,
you can be proud of that.
Exactly.
I was like, that's facts.
No, I totally agree. And so when we go through and talk about these civilizations, obviously we're going off a textbook and we're going off a college curriculum, which I trust those people because they're historians and they're a lot better at history than I am. But I do wish that we talked about civilizations and people that had a great influence on history regardless of their gender or race, because I feel like sometimes we tend to be like, oh, well, we haven't talked about enough women today. Let's add some women in. I'm not against women's history. I love women. Like in my last lecture, I specifically added a woman because I thought she was really, really influential in history. But I don't think we should add people based on things they can't control. And you'll also see that in this chapter. We're going to talk about the people that are influential to civilization, and we're not going to talk about people that aren't influential. So
there you go. Mansa Musa.
Very influential.
Very influential and also my favorite. Bing bong. Welcome to Query Corner. Back by popular demand. Sorry we missed it last week.
We just had so much to cover last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are upset about that, but we're back in the corner. We're back querying.
Cha-ching. Cha-ching. That was my Mansa Musa sound effect.
So this question's interesting.
Okay.
I'm a dying peasant.
Oh, word.
Not the question. No, I'm just kidding.
That's
in the Middle Ages.
Let's move on.
My wife died in childbirth, and I am leaving behind an infant and a toddler. Who's taking care of my children after I pass?
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, one of the great things about, like, where we live is in America is there's systems set up to help you out with that, even if you don't have someone to just pass it on to. But, yeah, that's going to be mostly a case-by-case basis. Hopefully there's someone to help you out. But one of the benefits of living in modern society is we got things figured out a little bit more. So, sorry it's not a super interesting answer, but
no, that's true. I mean, I remember reading stories where they'd like go to the monks or whatever and they get raised as a monk.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, if that's just like historical fiction.
No, that totally happens sometimes, but it's like, I mean, I'm not going to be like, yeah, every single time they go to the monks. You know, it just depends. But yeah, I mean, generally because monks are Christian, like they're more empathetic. So if you don't really know anyone, you're trying to get someone to take care of your kid, you take him to the most empathetic person you can, and that's usually going to be the monks.
Lit. Okay, our next
Oh,
question
man.
comes from Reddit. When two people touched and experienced a jolt of static electricity between each other, what did ancient people think was going on? Has there been any mention of this phenomenon prior to the discovery and understanding of electricity? I want to see if you have anything, but I have some sources here that are kind of interesting.
Okay. No, that's a good question. Give me like 2 seconds to think about it.
Yeah.
Because I have some interesting things I can say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I mean, I don't really know a lot of like, I have no idea of any sources that are talking about that kind of thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in ancient times, everything is centered around the idea that like gods are controlling all sorts of different parts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's the god of whatever here and the god of whatever here. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and they also were confused about how the human body worked, right? And so they could have you ever heard of the four humors theory?
Yeah.
Right. And so something like that would have made the average ancient person, I would guess, think that their humors are out of whack, and so they would go somewhere and get them fixed. One of the most interesting places that I've heard of where you go to get your humors fixed or something to that degree is there's a place in ancient Greece called the Asclepion, which if you want something else fun to say, you can try to say that.
Asclepion.
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 Asclepion. It's a temple to the god Asclepius.
Mm.
And at the Asclepion, what you'd do is you'd go to the Asclepion
Mm-hmm.
and you would pray to Asclepius that he could go ahead and like fix the things that was wrong with you. And so like if you felt like one of your humors was off, let's say you touched fingers and you think like your hand is all out of whack,
Yeah.
you'd go and you would actually you'd bring a clay
Mhm.
version of your hand, like you try to make your hand out of clay as best you
Whoa.
can,
They're getting crafty.
and offer it as an offering.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd put it on like the wall of the Asclepion, and then you were supposed to go to sleep right there and dream about Asclepion coming to you and replacing your hand with a new hand. And so if you look up like the wall of the Asclepion, dude, there's all sorts of stuff. There's like clay legs, dude. There's clay boobs over there. There's clay anything you can think of
Dang.
that Asclepion supposedly fixed.
Huh. Crazy.
So.
That was really interesting. So
I know it didn't totally answer the question at all, but I thought that was interesting.
Well, no, that is interesting to go along with it. To go along with it, I do actually have some sources, some primary sources here where they actually talk about static electricity in the ancient world.
Let's hear about it.
So one thing, apparently, I didn't know this, but amber, which is like a material made from tree sap, essentially.
You may know it from Jurassic Park.
Yes. But also is used in jewelry a lot in ancient times, as I'm sure you know. Apparently, it holds a static charge, which I wasn't aware of, but it does. And basically, there's a lot of people that talk about it. There's one person, Thales. The first, some say, well, so this guy was the first to discuss these physical problems. Aristotle and Hippias affirm that arguing from the magnet and from amber, he attributed a soul or even life to inanimate objects. So he's basically saying because this amber can hold a static charge, it means it attracts your hair to it.
So it might be alive.
Leaves or whatever to it. It has some kind of soul. And
interesting.
Aristotle, it seems, also thought the same thing about magnets.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then what's really interesting is they talk about
that makes sense. I was studying Aristotle the other day, and that actually makes sense. Okay, keep telling me what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Then maybe I'll add it on.
Well, no. So then what's interesting is then it gets to this idea. There's a fish variety in these areas, I think in like the Mediterranean, called the torpedo.
Okay.
Which is one of them fish that electric shocks people as well.
One of them fish.
I think my camera turned off again.
Well, good. It'll just be me then.
Yeah, okay. so basically, this fish, it's the torpedo. And what it does is when you touch it, it shocks you, okay?
And what this fish did.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of writers that wrote about it and their observations on how it shocks you and all this stuff that's interesting. But the most interesting one to me is this guy named Pliny, you know him? He claims that excessive sexual craving can be dulled if the gall of the torpedo, while it is still alive, is applied to the genitals.
Yep. No, that totally makes sense. Okay.
So
is
check
this
that
Pliny
out.
the younger or Pliny the elder?
I'm not sure. I think it just says Pliny. I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay. Anyways, Pliny he's one of those dudes that like is great to have a podcast about because what he did is he would go in the ancient world and like anything that ever happened like with sickness or disease or anything like this. So I'm not shocked whatsoever he wrote about this. Like he would write about all of it, and he would just like he would like give his theory, but he would act like it was truth from God.
Really?
Like this is just what I'm about to tell you is the most true thing you've ever heard, and just come with like the wildest explanation for it.
He is he is claiming that if you're horny that you should electrically shock your genitals. So
No, that's exactly what it is. He'll be like, he'll see this phenomenon and be like, like electricity? Well, you know what you do with that. And just have no evidence for it, but just start saying it. Like,
you know what you're going to want to do.
You know what you need to do? He's like, and this is just how the world works.
Yeah.
And go shock your genitals with it.
That's fair.
And then put that in the books of medical history forever until like the 1900s.
Until we proved him wrong.
And yeah.
That's sick.
It's just like God's word. Like that's what you do with it.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
Well, that's it for Queer Corner. We've had enough fun for this. We're going to leave you. Have fun.
Have fun. Why don't we just skip to the chase? Cut to the chase.
Everyone's wondering what.
Everyone's wondering like, who is this guy,
dude?
Would you want to tell us a little bit about him?
Well, listen. I think everyone's probably wondering. They're like, "Whoa, what did Mansa Musa do to become Blake's favorite person in all of history?" Because there's a lot. We've talked a lot of people that I like. I've expressed how much I think Caesar was a baller.
Yep.
All those things. But how does Mansa Musa become my favorite?
Great question.
Let me tell you how. So Mansa Musa, my boy, he was kind of in the area of like Nubia, right? If I'm correct.
He's in Nubia. Is in. Let's just say for the purposes of this, he's in Western Africa.
Okay, he's in Western Africa. That's good. And homeboy, basically the empire or kingdom he has, I guess you'd say it's probably a kingdom, right?
Either one works. It's complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Essentially, they get a lot of gold.
They have a lot of gold.
A lot of gold in that area, in that region, and they go find it. Okay, they're Minecrafting out there.
Yep.
And so when you get a lot of gold, that makes you rich.
Exactly.
It turns out. And so my boy
still
Mansa
today.
Musa, still today, same concept. My boy Mansa Musa, he's the king of this joint, and they all find gold, so it's actually all kind of his gold. Yep. He's the king of this joint. And so then what Mansa Musa does is he's like, wow, I have a lot of gold. Now some people, they go, build a bunch of cities, build armies or whatever.
Some people.
My boy Mansa Musa, though, he's a baller.
Not Mansa Musa.
He's not like that. So what he does is he goes on what I've termed the I'm Rich tour. All right? Every artist, every musician, they have a tour. There's a name for it. Taylor Swift had her Eras tour.
Which paled in comparison to
the
I'm Rich tour.
You thought the Taylor Swift Eras tour was a big deal and that she made a lot of money and spent a lot of money and she flew her private jet? You don't know about Mansa Musa.
You never heard of him yet.
So my boy Mansa Musa says, I'm going on the I'm Rich tour. And so he goes all over like Europe and all those places. Everywhere basically that he could reach, without crossing the ocean. And he just basically goes and he takes all his gold and he just shows everyone how much money he has. And he like gives them money. He just like throws money at them.
You describe it perfectly. I know there's a source. I don't know where it is. But I think while he's going to Mecca, he like brings this. He's on his Get Rich tour. I'm Rich tour.
On
right?
the I'm Rich tour.
And he brings like all this crazy stuff to Mecca because he's Islamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to find like exactly the source that says it. Here's it paraphrased. In 1324, Mansa Musa embarked on a Hajj, which is a religious pilgrimage to Mecca, like I was saying, traveling with an entourage that included 8,000 nobles, 12,000 slaves, and 100 camel loads of pure gold.
100
so they're all
camel loads.
Basically, all those people are carrying pure gold.
Yeah.
And he actually like ruined Europe's economy because he went into Europe and would just like throw gold out. It's like Mardi Gras, but crazy.
Dude, do you guys get it now why he's the coolest person ever?
And I need you to understand, I wasn't like, well, yeah, he went and he ruined like Italy's economy. He ruined Greece's economy. No, he ruined Europe's economy.
The continent of Europe.
And that's like, he just had more to go. He wasn't like done or anything.
And like, I think we think, people nowadays we know are ballers. No one balled like Mansa Musa.
I wonder how rich you would be like today. Let me look
Since Mansa Musa, no one has balled that much. There's been people that probably have more money like than Mansa Musa had. But no one has balled as hard as he had with that money. No one's gone on an I'm Rich tour and ruined an economy by giving out too much money for free.
Nobody has ever done that.
Just because, like, he's like Mr. Beast, but just, like, way cooler.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm wondering, like, because Elon Musk is the most rich person in the world right now. I wonder what, like, is the...
What's the equivalent for Mansa Musa?
Comparison.
I can tell you the most valuable company of all time in history was the East India Trading Company. Historians estimate that in modern day dollars, the East India Trading Company was worth about $8 trillion.
Okay, well, he's not quite that much, I don't think.
Well, he's definitely not that much. Like, that is worth more than most countries.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the East India Trading Company became such a big company, it actually was a country. They had an army.
That's crazy.
And if you're wondering how they got so rich, we should talk about it some episode. Maybe we could do a special episode about them. But
I'd love to.
Essentially, they owned the stock market.
Because I don't really know a lot about them other
Really?
than watching Pirates, and like I know I know very basic knowledge about them, you know. But
No, I just like them because I'm a big fan of companies and also history, and so it's both.
so this is what Google AI says, and I'm not going to take time to go any further than this right now because we're in the middle of the
Take this
podcast.
is the Google AI grain
So,
of salt, seeing as Google AI
I
gets
promise-
a lot of things wrong.
I understand that once you say one wrong thing in history, no one trusts you. So this is not coming from me or my
Mhm.
knowledge. Please just understand this. I did a quick Google search because I was out of curiosity. We all do it. When we're curious, we all look at Google.
Yeah.
If it's not in the Google box, sometimes we're like, okay, I'm done. So it says, well, it's impossible to directly compare the wealth of Mansa Musa, modern billionaires like Elon Musk, basically, it said Elon Musk's net worth is around $305 billion. Mansa Musa's wealth estimate is up to $1 trillion. So more than 3 times as wealthy as Elon Musk.
And what you have to keep in
today.
mind about Mansa Musa too, which is why he could ball so hard, is Elon Musk is worth $305 billion.
Uh-huh.
Dog's got no money, technically, right?
It's all just like in stuff.
It's all in Tesla, SpaceX,
Yeah.
Starlink, all these things. And I'm not saying he's poor, because like obviously when you have that much money, the bank will actually just give you money interest free. Fun fact. Like,
oh, I didn't know that.
if you have that much like in assets, they're just like, here's some money, go spend it. It's kind of a crazy thing.
I'm learning a lot of new things here.
But Mansa Musa was liquid, dog. that was all just gold he owned.
Not even cash. It was straight gold.
Just straight gold.
Yeah, incredible. So this guy, I'll give you a brief overview of his life. Blake pretty much covered everything, but he is the king of Mali, which is, like I was saying, along with Carthage and Egypt. And forgive me if I'm forgetting anything, but I would go ahead and say those are probably the 3 most influential African empires of all time.
Yeah.
Mali is located. There's still a country named Mali today,
Mm-hmm.
and the ancient state of Mali is around that same area. But basically, they find salt mines, which salt is a big deal in the ancient world.
Yeah.
Because why?
Well, they didn't have fridges.
They didn't have fridges.
You got to preserve your food somehow. Salt's great at
Exactly.
preserving meat.
Mm-hmm. So they could preserve their stuff. So like, not only gold is definitely the number one reason that made them rich, but salt is not far behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so they have insane amounts of. They conquer an area next to them that used to be culturally called the area of Ghana, not where the country of Ghana is today,
Okay.
but where ancient Ghana used to be. That has a bunch of gold mines, and then they have a bunch of salt mines, and so they combine all of that and just makes them incredibly wealthy. The capital of Mansa Musa's empire is called Timbuktu.
Yeah.
So you ever heard, I'm going to send him to Timbuktu or something like that? That's what we're talking about here.
There you go.
Timbuktu becomes a center for Islamic learning. Because Mansa Musa is a Muslim. If you remember the Moors Caliphate, you'd have to look at a map to really understand this, but I'm going to describe it as best I can. The Moors Caliphate, because they're stopped at Constantinople and can't head into Europe, they conquer along the northern coast of Africa,
Yeah.
which right across the Sahara Desert from the northern coast of Africa is the Kingdom of Mali.
Okay.
Okay. And by this time, they figured out you actually can cross this place because of camels. We figured out camels can do that, John.
Hop on a camel, you can get across the Sahara.
Yep. And now you're chilling. And so those Islamic people cross the desert with camels, and most of the people in that Western Africa region, most of the rulers get converted to Islam, but most of the common people don't. So it's kind of the same pattern we just saw in India with Islam,
Yeah.
where in India, the rulers are Islamic, but the common people are Hindu. Same in Mali, in Western Africa, just like we talked about, same pattern. That's developing everywhere. So the rulers are Islamic. Mansa Musa, ruler, so he's Islamic. And the common people are not. They still believe in like African spiritualism and things like that. So, but I think Mansa Musa goes on his I'm Rich tour.
Yeah.
And not much more to say about that. I think we covered that pretty good.
Yeah. If you don't already understand just from all that why he's the coolest person in history, then I don't really know what to tell you.
Yeah. One of the reasons, though, that the Kingdom of Mali and Mansa Musa grow in wealth is because at this time the Christian and Islamic worlds decide that gold's going to be really, really valuable. And in a basic
Took him
way.
long enough.
But they kind of it's a universal currency basically. I mean, not the same as like the US dollar is today, but it's a universal thing that's worth a lot because you can make like idols and icons out of it and all sorts of stuff. There's lots of uses for gold.
It was like Bitcoin for them back then.
Except they didn't.
Think about it.
I don't know a lot about Bitcoins, but probably.
Well, it's like a limited resource, and we just kind of decided, okay, this is a limited resource. This is gonna be worth something now.
Yep, that's exactly what it's like. Yep, and so they're gonna grow in power because like the Islamic nations and Christian nations like, hey, we think gold is really good, and Montemus is like, guess what? I have a lot of.
Also, if you bundle in salt, we'll do half off.
Yeah. Great businessman. Great businessman. But that's just I would say that's the biggest and most powerful state in Africa at this time. We're going to head over to talking about Egypt because Egypt never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, its power falters at the Bronze Age collapse, which we talked about a while ago.
Yeah.
But Egypt's still there.
Yeah.
They're still doing their thing. They're still cooking.
And if you look it up today,
Still are there.
also still there.
Yep. Still doing their thing.
Mm-hmm.
They adopt a version of Christianity that's a little bit different. It's called Coptic Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of this before?
I've heard of the Coptic, yeah.
Yeah. It's governed by, just like how the Orthodox Church has a patriarch and the Catholic Church has a pope.
Mm-hmm.
The Coptic Church has his name is the Pope of Alexandria.
Mm.
And I bet you can't guess where he lives.
Give it to me.
Okay, it's Alexandria.
Oh.
Yep. But they're very similar to how the Eastern Orthodox Church functions.
Okay.
And so these Coptic Christians kind of expand down the eastern coast of Africa. And because of persecution, that reminds you a lot of the story of the pioneers
Mm-hmm.
and Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and their dealings with persecution where they keep having to move further and further west.
Mm-hmm.
Christians will have to continue to move further and further south down the east coast of Africa.
Oh, okay.
And so if you're looking at a map south of Egypt, you go far enough, you'll get to a place called Ethiopia, where that is finally like their Utah, where they settle down. They're like, okay, this is a place where we can be safe enough from the Islamic persecutions.
Right.
And so it's very, very similar to the story of the pioneers, where they settle and they're like, this is going to be a new Zion, is what they call it.
Okay.
And so they build lots of temples. One of their kingdoms, among a lot of them, is called the Zagwe kingdom, but you have that's just the most prominent one. But all of these are kingdoms in Ethiopia along the eastern coast.
Okay.
And this is traditionally, I think they believe, and I'm reaching back far into the archives of my mind, but I think they believe that Christianity was brought there by Mark, the gospel writer.
Okay.
So interesting.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah, we don't even know if Mark even existed.
Yeah.
But that's just like tradition, like
similar to a lot of people in the Bible, actually.
Yeah. Very, very similar to a lot of people in the Bible. But yeah, they go down, they create a new Jerusalem, a new Zion, that kind of area, and they build lots of temples. One of the temples down there, actually, they claim that they still got the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh.
So
like currently they claim that?
Yeah, they currently claim that. And only one dude is allowed to go in there, and he goes in there and he's like, yep, it's there.
Okay.
So we just got to take his word for it.
Well, I mean, I guess like you can't blame him. I mean, that is how the Ark of the Covenant worked. The only one person could see it. So I guess
there is some reports of British soldiers, I think during either the First or Second World War, that went in there and they're like, yeah, nothing's in there.
Well, they're probably just jealous.
But I mean, it's their word against the one guy's word. So do whatever you want.
Who do you trust? A Brit? Or some dude who's seen the Ark of the Covenant?
Or some dude who went in there and sees it.
There and see it.
So they built a lot of really cool temples. So you got some time, look up like Ethiopian like rock Christian temples.
That sounds sick when you say Ethiopian rock Christians. Sounds like they do like music festivals.
Sounds like most evangelical churches.
It's true.
No hate.
No hate.
If you go further down along the eastern coast, you get to a region that's called the Swahili coast.
Okay.
I think we might have mentioned them a little bit earlier. This can get confusing because if you just want a broad overview, most of the eastern coast of Africa is Christian. The western coast of Africa is Islamic, with Mansa Musa we just talked about.
Okay.
Right? And the center of Africa, the parts that are not touched very much by civilization, they're still very like polytheistic, African spiritualism.
Okay.
The one exception are the Swahili. So they're on the eastern coast, and they are south of Ethiopia, and they trade a lot with India.
Oh.
And
welcome to India.
Yeah, trade a lot with the Indians over there. And because of that, they get exposed to Islam.
Oh, okay.
And so they convert to Islam. But yeah, they're very, very much a trading nation.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So they're trading all sorts of stuff with India, with other places, just because they have that road to the Indian Ocean. And if you go take a world history post 1500 class, this is probably where you're going to start your classes right here, because the Indian Ocean just becomes a mecca for trade.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of just entrepôts, which is basically the word for like when cultures combine and trade a bunch with each other. And the Swahili states are going to get in on this.
Yeah, even to this day.
Yeah,
Huge,
even to this day.
The Suez Canal, things like that. It's a big deal.
Or places like Singapore,
Mm-hmm.
really, really big over there, right? All of Malaysia, that's the kind of area that the Swahili are trading with.
Mm-hmm.
So, then if we move back over to other nations in the western coast of Africa, you have a state called Nigeria forming, which Nigeria still exists today. So you ever heard of that? It's still around. Nigeria is not as advanced as Mali, but they're talking a little bit back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's really, really interesting that I found in my research preparing for this is there's this like almost labyrinth of walls, but they don't just put them up, they like cut them out of the rock. Which I just think about that, like I even think like whittling is so hard to do. Like cutting anything out of something, just incredible.
Instead of building them, they just cut them out.
Yeah. I remember when we like did whittling in Scouts, and I was like, I'll just like cut this in all the pieces I need and glue them together. Like, no, that's not how you do it.
Dang.
You gotta like.
That may be a unique experience to you.
Oh yeah, maybe not everybody did that.
As soon as I got a knife when I was a kid, I was out there sharpening sticks like no one's business, man.
But yeah, the maze of like walls, it has dude, all this stuff has funny names. Maybe I shouldn't say they're funny, but it's called Sungbo's Eredo.
Oh.
It's named after, I think it's a Nigerian queen named Sungbo. I don't know what Eredo means. Probably like some
walls.
rock maze. Yeah, the walls.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
There is no war in Bossing Say.
Dude, what?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
You've seen Avatar?
No.
Oh, really?
No, I haven't seen Avatar.
Oh, what the crap?
The show or the movie?
Like the show, yeah.
No, I haven't seen it.
That's actually crazy.
Do I need to see that?
I just feel like everyone's seen it. Like,
yeah.
You're probably the first person I've met in a long time that hasn't seen it. I mean, I recommend it.
Okay.
I feel like you'd like it.
Well,
it's animated, but
don't worry. All the people that like actually got the reference laughed. I promise.
yeah. No, there is no war in Bossing Say. Keep that in mind.
Can't wait to learn where Bossing Say is.
Yeah, dude. I mean, hey. I would say I'll watch it with you, but every time I try to watch something with you, you're like, actually, I gotta go downstairs and do homework. So.
Yeah. No, I'm not a big movie watcher or show watcher.
Yeah.
Listen though, I did watch Severance and I liked it.
That's true. That's true.
I'm a fan of that. But now I just gotta wait a year. I'm excited for it though, or more probably. Let's see if there's anything else I want to hit on. You know what? I think that's actually pretty good.
Right.
There's one more funny name I guess I could say.
May as well.
It's another African kingdom called Mapungungwe.
Whoa.
So I wanted to say that, but I can't really fit in. Basically,
that sounds fun to say. You mind if I give it a shot?
Yeah, go give it.
Okay, here we go. Mapungungwe.
Yep.
That is fun. Everyone try it.
Mapungungwe. I hope I see someone like walking into history tomorrow and they're saying Mapungungwe.
I hope they give you a little finger.
Yep.
Mapungungwe.
There's also, if you've heard of Zimbabwe, that's
Classic.
very, very south of Africa. Yeah, some people call it the Great Zimbabwe. Just another African empire. There's not anything. I mean, there's lots that are unique and special about Zimbabwe. I'm picking and choosing the ones I want to cover here, just because. I mean, for the sake of time, I could go into a lot more of them, but I just want to share the overall patterns and more just like the issues that we talked about at the start are really important to understand. But yeah, if you just for a quick review of the things we've covered so far, you've got Mali, right? The king is
my boy Mansa Musa.
The capital is, do you remember that?
The capital is Timbuktu.
Timbuktu.
Easy one to remember.
Yep. And what religion are they over there?
Well, my boy Mansa Musa is Muslim.
He is.
So they're pretty much all.
Yep. Exactly. But for the most part, these places that are Islamic, you should remember that the rulers are Muslim, but the vast majority of the people are like African spiritualists. They believe in lots of different gods.
Yeah.
Mansa Musa is super rich because he finds gold and salt, mainly gold though. Gold's going to make you more rich because the Islam and Christian societies really love it right now.
Yep.
Then you've got Nigeria, a little bit to the south of that area. Then over in Egypt, you got the Coptic Christianity.
Yep.
Similar to Orthodox Christianity, migrating a little further south, staying along the eastern coast. You've got Ethiopia and their version of Christianity.
Yep.
They're building the New Jerusalem, New Zion that they want to build just to keep themselves safe. And also, when we think of Christianity, we rarely think of Africa. Ethiopians and people, Aksum, if you remember, they also were in this area. They would be quite frustrated at that because they believe that they're very, very early converts to Christianity.
Yeah, Aksum is often seen as the first Christian.
First official
state.
Christian state.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even further south, you have the Swahili, who are the one exception to the rule of Islam, Christianity, and African spiritualism.
Mhm.
They are Islamic, but they're on the eastern coast.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of trading.
There you go.
So there you go.
Big news. A lot happening in Africa.
A lot going on in Africa. A lot of great stuff going on in Africa,
Mhm.
especially with Mansa Musa and his tour.
Yep.
So.
So anyway, we're going to get you out of here because I know you might be in a big time rush.